Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Round Robin. I'm your host, Tracy Preston, along with Christine Mulligan, Nina Mulligan, Regina Lindsay, and of course, my husband, Todd Preston. Hey, everyone.
Hey.
Howdy.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
So I hope everybody's had a great week. Todd and I, of course, we were binging on Netflix. And this series that we watched is just too crazy to not talk about. So, Making a Murderer. And really the basis of this series is about the wrongfully convicted. So there's a man named Steve Avery, and it was back in the 80s, like maybe 1985.
Yeah, I think it was.
About 1985. Yeah. So this man, so he's in his early 20s, and there was a woman, a mother, a married woman with children running on the beach, and she ends up getting brutally beaten and raped and left for dead. Well, the person she identified looked very similar to Steve Avery, and it wasn't him, and the evidence just wasn't lining up. But guess what? He got convicted and spent 18 years of his life serving time for this crime he never committed. This guy worked hard, fought, finally got out. So he's out for 2 years. They end up suing the city for imprisoning this man and losing 18 years of his life. And I think the reward was like $38 million, right? Against the city of Matadawak, something like that. It's in Wisconsin, by the way. It doesn't take place in Michigan, but the county where Steve Avery lives in is not Matadawak County, but the original officers that were on the first case were after this guy for some reason because, I'm thinking the city just didn't want to pay the money.
Exactly.
Katie Holbach was a young lady who took photographs of used cars for sale. And so Stephen Avery's parents had like a 40-acre salvage yard full of cars and this and that. So she would always come and she would take pictures of vehicles that they had for sale and put them in basically like an auto trader. So this Katie Holbach had gone to Steve's, taken a picture of a van. He paid her. She gave him an auto trader, and she left. Well, she didn't show up for 3 days. Her roommates didn't report it for 3 days, like the whole kit and caboodle. And all of a sudden, they find her RAV4 in his parents' salvage yard. Now, mind you, I did say it's 40 acres. This place is ginormous. And where the RAV4 was found is on the outskirts with branches put on it, the roof of a car leaned against it, like completely unlike any other vehicle that's in the junkyard. And so it is the Matadawak police that are in another county giving people access to get onto this property. And it's like this whole crazy thing. So, of course, they arrest him right away. This is her last known place, and she's missing. And then the next thing you know, they find a bunch of burnt bones right on his property.
Chopped up burnt bones.
Chopped up, and I'm talking chopped up like wood chipper.
Yeah.
They weren't very big pieces. But the interesting thing that's missing is her vertebral column, her entire spine. That was never located. And so were her ribs. Those were not found. And the bones had cut marks in them. So on this property where Stephen Avery lives, there's a bunch of family. Like his sister lives there and her kids. And well, one of Stephen Avery's sister's sons, Brandon, 16 years old, kind of a big kid, very low IQ. And somehow they start talking to this kid. Now he's 16 years old. He's at school. They won't let his mom come in and sit with him, and no lawyer. And, of course, the cops are kind of pushing him. Tell me what happened. We know what happened. Well, basically what happened was it was a false confession. And they needed that confession in order to make the arrest stick with Stephen Avery. Cut to, they were both convicted. And I think the series that we watched, Making a Murderer, I think that came out in 2017. 2017,
for the first
I think.
for the first season.
Right, and then there's the second season.
Yep.
And at that point, Stephen and his nephew Brandon had been in prison for 10 years.
Yep.
And, Stephen Avery's story has never changed. And he's like, well, I had to fight the first time. I'll continue to fight. I didn't do this. So there's a whole first series and then there's a whole second season. So Kathleen Zellner picks up Stephen's case, and this woman is one amazing attorney. She's what every attorney should be, because she told Stephen, listen, I'll take your case, but you better be innocent, because if you're not, I'm going to find out. And then basically you're screwed. And he's like, no, go for it. So this woman actually did her homework, pulling the murder victim's cell phone records. So she's watching where she's pinging, and it's just mind-blowing. I don't know, kind of where it left off, I have a feeling that there's a couple people involved, like her ex-boyfriend. I think it was him. It hasn't come out yet, but she was kind of being stalked. And, she had a planner in her car, and somehow this dude ends up with her planner. So it's unraveling where we're at. I mean, they're still in prison. There's another group of attorneys for false confessions. It's kind of like their specialty. And so, they received something called a habeas corpus for Brandon to get out. And then, so he was granted that, but then it gets pushed to a higher court, and then they rescind it. And then they push it to a higher court, they rescind that. So, right when they thought they were going to be able to get this kid out, they won't let him out. So I just found this whole thing so disturbing, and I just feel like this is a big eye-opener as to how many false convictions there are out there. I thought it would be a good topic for us to talk about. And of course, we can talk about other things, but I just kind of wanted to see what your guys' thoughts were on that. Have you guys, now I know, Regina, you said you watched it quite a while ago, but what do you remember from the show? Like, did you also feel the same way, that it could be the ex-boyfriend?
Yeah, I thought definitely it could be the ex-boyfriend, but also, so the location of that vehicle, when they found it, not only was it like in the back 40, as we would say in Texas, but it was like near a gap in the fence that nobody used as access, but it would have been easy to put something there and not necessarily have anybody notice. And the vehicle was not there the first several times that the police searched the property, or at least it wasn't located. So it was all just kind of hinky from the beginning. Part of this was this family kind of had a bad reputation in this small community, not because they necessarily had done anything wrong, but they just kind of were, I don't know, just sort of outcasts in the community. It kind of reminded me of, remember that episode that we did about the dudes that were supposed to have gone hunting, and they end up in a small town and they're murdered by like this group that has a reputation in town, and the police didn't even mess with them, right?
The
and
Banditos.
Like, right. But like the fact that, if something bad happened, everybody's like, well, it's got to be them because they're sketchy as hell. Only in this case, it wasn't true. And they're questioning somebody, for all intents and purposes, is mentally challenged and a minor, outside of the presence of counsel, outside of the presence of his parent. And then when he wasn't confessing at first, it was like, oh, well, he must have also been involved, which is how they ended up including him. And then this child's giving details of this so-called murder that he took part in that don't match up with the actual evidence, but conveniently they find a way to somehow make this circumstantial case. It was just insane. How convoluted it got was just, mind-blowing.
Right. Going back to Brandon and what you just said, the young boy, the confession was that, right, he went over to his uncle's. His uncle answered the door all sweaty and said, hey, come back here. I want to show you this. And he's saying that, there was Katie and she was handcuffed and she was naked and I raped her, he raped her, and then stabbed her a couple places and slit her throat. here's the thing. There's not a single bit of biological evidence from this boy or from this woman. And if they slit her throat and stabbed her, there's not a single drop of blood on the bed, near the bed, on the walls, on the floor. There was absolutely zero DNA in this guy's trailer, right? And this is the other thing that absolutely drove me insane was they basically told Steven, like, yo, you got to get off the property. They kicked him off the property, went through his trailer, went through everything numerous times.
7 times.
7 times. Yep. And all of a sudden, on like the last time, oops, there's her key in your bedroom. How'd we miss that? And the thing with this key is, you know, you have your key, you have the key ring, and then she had like some kind of material, like something you would hang on to, had absolutely zero evidence of this girl's DNA on the key. And the only DNA that was on the key was Steven's.
Right. Because they scrubbed
But
it
it
clean.
wasn't actual DNA.
Right.
Yeah.
It was air quotes here, sweat DNA, which is not a thing.
What do you mean it's not a thing?
It's not real. There is no such thing. It's part of the transcripts that I was going back and reading because they made it sound like it was something, but it's not really a thing.
What?
Sweat DNA doesn't exist.
The Keepers and Making a Murderer were my introduction to binge watching a series. Okay,
Yeah.
These 2 documentaries came out around the same time in the same year, and I literally stayed up for 48 hours, and I think watched these 2 things like back to back. Insane. But Regina is right. The whole DNA thing. Now, I don't know about now. They may be able to pull DNA from sweat because we're more technologically advanced in that sort of thing. And please excuse my weird sounding voice. I've been losing it all week. They claimed that it was like inside the car at one point that had been sitting there forever. And then it was also on this key, but then somehow it also got underneath the hood of the car. I mean, this latent sweat evidence that they had or whatever was apparently like all over the fucking place, but there wasn't any regular DNA up in there. There wasn't any blood in there. There wasn't any hair in there. And just like when you send your saliva off, you know, for the DNA testing and things like that, when you want to see, you know, your heritage and all those sorts of things, you have to spit like a copious amounts of spit into this little vial. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to be able to pick up enough credible DNA evidence from a smear of sweat. It was just like bonkers how much they completely fabricated and botched this entire case. And it was so insane. And again, why they didn't look at the boyfriend more, I will never understand that, because I feel like that was just clear as day. There was something wrong with that dude, like straight up.
Yeah, I agree because, right, what is it that they always say the murderer does is insert themselves into, right, like, so if the news cameras are around, that person could be absolutely standing in the crowd, seeing what's going on. And the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend, was also a friend of another, she had a couple roommates, I believe, and all of a sudden he's helping to lead the search for this girl. And he's the one who ended up, like when they finally got permission to go on to, because they didn't have search warrant, by the way. They asked permission from one of the family members, because Stephen wasn't there.
The brother.
It was the brother.
Yeah.
So asked permission if they could come on site. And then, so, you know, the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend gives this other woman who's in the search party, because they're like, well, why don't you go in there and, oh, here's the camera, right? Well, all of a sudden, you know, you hear the recording, she's calling in and, you know, she's like, hey, you know, I'd like to run a VIN number by you guys. And they're like, yep, that's the VIN number. And they're like, where are you? And they're like, she's like, I'm in Stephen Avery's yard. And it just went downhill from there. So I just want to get back to the sweat DNA. Because when we did the story on Diane Newton King, the news anchor who her husband shot her, right? They said when, like in the research that I did, it said when someone sweats and they drop that sweat, they're dropping millions of skin cells.
Well, they could drop epithelial cells, but so I was reading this article on, it's the Broad Street Review that was talking about this series because I was trying to remind myself because I didn't have time to go back and watch 2 seasons of the series.
Mhm.
This is a paragraph out of that. It says the reaction to Making a Murder has been strangely political. Right-wing pundits claim filmmakers Moira Demos and Laura Riccardi omitted key facts, but one person's facts are another person's deceptions. For example, the former prosecutor claims that Avery's sweat DNA, in quotation marks, was found on the car key in his bedroom and on Hallbach's SUV. The problem is there is no such thing as sweat DNA. They didn't say they found epithelial cells that matched him. They said sweat DNA, not the same thing. So in any case, it's not real. So we're talking about, again, like Nina said, like to get DNA from sweat, which is not super easy to do. There has to be like copious amounts of sweat, but his fingerprints went on the car key. So how is his DNA there and his fingerprints aren't?
Exactly. And how about the blood? Because when I looked at, the blood evidence that they showed during the show, there's like this weird little streak by where the ignition is. And then there was this weird little drop on the inside of the door jamb. And then like one little drop on like another little piece of something that she had in the back seat. And I'm thinking, that's interesting because
Like someone had a sample?
Right. And so I know it's been a while since you saw the show, but the first time he was arrested, taken in wrongfully, they had a vial of his blood. And so when his first set of attorneys, they get into the evidence and the styrofoam container that held the vial of blood was busted open.
Yeah, you could clearly see it been tampered with, been opened, yep.
Yeah, and there was a little drop of blood like through the plastic topper, like they had maybe stuck or they had stuck a needle in there to withdraw some blood.
Yeah.
And, they're like, oh, it has to be him because he had like a big, deep gash like on the lateral aspect of his middle finger on the right hand, I think it was. And so this Catherine Zellner, the attorney that came afterwards, she tested everything out. They got the RAV4. They tried, numerous times, like if you've got blood all over your finger, start that car. And they did it numerous times, and blood never got on the dashboard where they showed it. And then the other thing is in the back of the RAV4, like the, what do you call it, that little door back there?
It's a little door.
It's a little door. Yeah. The hatch, there were weird.
Hatch?
Yes, thank you. There were weird little blood splatters on that. And then there was some blood like on the inside and the back, like along the side. And during the original case, they're like, oh, well, that's blood. And you can tell that was hair. Again, while they're out there testing it, Catherine Zellner and her team, because they were like, oh, Brandon said, oh, we threw her body in the back of the Jeep. So they had a dummy, weighed the same length, all that kind of stuff. No matter how they threw it in, not one single speck of blood got on the...
And they doused that dummy's head
with
blood.
Yeah.
Trying to get something, and it still didn't work.
And nothing. And so no matter how many times they did it, it never once ever made a blood splatter. So what they came up with is that she must have been beaten at the back of the truck on the floor, and that almost made the exact same blood spatter patterns because they put like a big piece of like white board or something up there to protect the original hatch, but to see if they could get the same blood splatter, and that's the only way they could get it, right? And then the other thing is the one sheriff who's involved in this, he was involved in the first case as well. He had called in to, I don't know, their dispatch, right? And he's like, hey, just want to talk about this license plate on this vehicle. And he calls it out, and she's like, yes, that belongs to this missing girl. Is that what we're talking about? And he's like, yeah, and is that a 99 RAV4? So that whole conversation was pointed out and they actually caught him during the trial that, well, then you must have been looking at the vehicle. So it's crazy because the first trial is like, they're trying to say that the cops did all of this. And I certainly think a few of them had their hands in it, but they're also, it's like this weird cover up thing like, okay, you killed this girl, but we're going to put it on this Avery guy. We're going to protect you, but this is what you're going to do and you're in on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you think that at all, Nina or Regina?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the thing is like, I love how these like small town things work. It's like these two guys were like the dumbest people in town, according to everybody, right? They're like inbred recluses with like IQs of 40. Everybody pats them on the head and gives them a gold star if they tie their shoes, right? Yet they were capable of committing this heinous act of murder, erasing all evidence, physical and DNA and otherwise, from the residence, hide the body, or incinerate it to the point of no return except for a few body parts. And it's just like it doesn't make sense. Like, is it that they're so stupid that they're brilliant? Like, that's the only thing I can think of. So I think 100% they were the scapegoats because somebody just didn't like them because they were probably just annoying. You know what I mean? And they were like a scourge on the town. So like, who can we do this to that nobody's really going to give a shit about? And we'll just railroad them with it because this is one of our boys that actually did this, and we got to stick up for him. So absolutely, I think it was a cover-up.
Yep.
Yeah, and
and conveniently that 36 or 38 million, however much the lawsuit was for, was settled for $400,000.
Which all
after he was arrested.
Right, which all went to the original two attorneys to try his case the first time.
Yeah.
Go ahead, hon.
And let's not forget, on the Avery property, there's the car crusher. Now, why wouldn't he have tried to crush the car and destroy the evidence?
They were smart enough to destroy DNA evidence, just not smart enough to crush the car.
Right, and that's what Todd and I were saying. We're like, well, yeah, not only could he have crushed the car, he could have buried that car so deep nobody would have ever found it. Like, why would it be like right there on the edge of the property where some chick walked in 5 minutes, found the car?
Yeah.
And to add to what you guys are saying, how it was most definitively a cover-up for what reason, I'm not sure. Because I'm also still on the idea that I don't understand why they didn't go after the ex-boyfriend a little bit harder. So who was he in cahoots with? I don't know. But going back to sweat DNA, okay, so sweat is nucleic acids, right? And it includes DNA really because of the skin cells that are within that sweat. So the thing about skin cells is everything else they had and everything they touched during them interviewing them and all that, their skin cells could have been transferred from any and all of the above of that. So planting and messing around with evidence is almost, you can argue that is also another reason to show that there was tampering. If they found sweat, quote unquote, DNA everywhere. Because basically what that is just skin cells of them. And never in, like Regina said, never in large enough quantities to actually get full DNA strands.
Oh, thank you for that.
I mean, there are ways today, years ago.
Yeah, but
in 2007, the technology didn't really exist to replicate those DNA chains to a large enough quantity test.
Yeah, but even today, for as far as sweat DNA, so it is technically a thing in today's day. It is still not viable in courts ever because of the fact that it all depends on copious amount of skin cells being in that sweat. So it's really not the sweat itself. It's the skin cells within the sweat that they can get DNA markers from. But you'd have to have a lot of skin cells within that copious amounts of sweat. Like, it's insane, even in today's technology age. And it's still, even if you had copious amounts, it still would never be admissible in courts because of the fact that anybody else's skin cells can be there also.
Yeah, just by basic touch DNA. right?
Well, I mean, if they dump that key, so if somebody plants that key in his room on his dresser, guess what? House dust is primarily comprised of.
Cool. Right, exactly. So, bam, skin cells, sweat DNA.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the one who turned over the extra key, well, was the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend. He had a whole lot of stuff to hand over to the cops.
including
That's convenient.
the girl's daily planner, which magically appeared back at her apartment when she had it with her the day she died.
When she was out on the road.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah, for this ex-boyfriend, I want to know who's his daddy, his uncle, his mother's lover. Who's the person
Exactly.
he's in cahoots with that was powerful enough for them to make this go away for this kid? Because that's what
Okay,
they
so
did.
she had
That's
the
what
planner
they
with her, and he ended up with the planner, but she never came home.
right.
tried. Right.
Right. Yeah, all good points.
Did
And
Scotty beam it to him?
he's got a portal. I know, I think I said something very similar to Tom when we were watching it. What's even more twistier is so you have the ex-boyfriend, and then somehow he's tied into Brandon's stepfather. Brandon is the one who came up with the false confession, the one with a very low IQ. This guy, his first name is Scott. I can't remember their last name. It's a weird name, but he's married to
Tadek.
Brandon's Tadek, right? He's married to Brandon's mother. Okay. The boy who's in prison. Now they're also pulling in Brandon's other brother, Bobby, because Bobby, he lived in another trailer not far from Steve Avery's trailer. And he made the comment, and he actually was on the prosecution side instead of his own family side. And basically he said, oh yeah, I came out, I saw this girl go into Steve's trailer, and then I left. But when I left, her car was still there. And none of that's true because they had it recorded that he had said previously her car was gone when he came out. So I'm thinking it's Bobby, the ex-boyfriend, and there's something going on with the stepdad.
Yep.
What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, and I think I remember thinking that at the time that Bobby was definitely involved in lying about all of this. And then there's this part of me, the conspiracy theorist in my head, that's like, okay, so did they decide to murder this chick knowing that they had a get out of jail free card handy because Steve was already on everybody's radar? Or was this somehow in cahoots with law enforcement to circumvent the lawsuit that potentially could have bankrupted this small town?
Absolutely. And here's another thing. So the more we keep talking, the more things that I keep remembering is that Bobby, Brandon's brother, who's in prison, false confession, they confiscated his computer.
Right.
And his computer is full of hard child and teen porn,
And gore.
gore, headless teenagers that have been murdered, all kinds of stuff. I mean, it goes on. They had a list. I mean, it was a litany of items that they found on here. Something's up with this kid. Something's not right. That's not normal. And Steve Avery, even though like everyone's looking at him and the whole family like they're just trash, they are hardworking people. They might not look like your neighbor next door, but they never did anything to anyone. And from what I could tell by watching the show, Steve Avery was a hopeless fool for love. Right? He when he first got out of prison, I don't remember if he was seeing this girl when he was in prison or met her afterwards, but I think it was maybe he met her afterwards.
Well, there was this one girlfriend he had 2 kids with.
Right, but she also had 1 or 2 kids.
Yeah.
Their father wasn't involved, and he's like, I'll take care of them. I'll take care of you. Let's get married. And then they had a couple more kids together. In fact, he had just had twins,
Yep.
twin baby boys, when he got thrown back into prison. Right? Then he was involved with another girl. Like, it just seemed like all he wanted to do was be married and have someone to love. And then you've got this, deviant nephew who's watching child porn, teen porn, mutilation, heads cut off. I mean, you name it. So I'm definitely feeling like this kid was involved. And I'm thinking this poor mother, Steven's sister, her one son who's, for all intents and purposes, mentally challenged. He's in prison for false imprisonment. It could be her other son, and it could be her husband involved. Like, can you imagine, like, this poor woman, what she's going through?
Yeah, but I don't know if I believe it, I mean, are these the same cops that found this porn as the same cops that found, one drop here, one drop there, and a smudge on a key?
Nope.
I mean...
It wasn't them. It was Catherine.
Oh.
It was the new attorney. It's the new attorney that's trying to get him off, and she's doing this all pro bono, by the way. She's the one who's discovered all this stuff, not the other ones. She's actually implicating the cops, too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I haven't seen the follow-up to that.
Yeah, there definitely needs... I'm sure there's a season 3 because they haven't even gone to court. Yeah, like she's...
Yeah, because I feel like the last time I watched it, it was like they had gotten the new lawyers or whatever, but they were still fighting it. They were still in there.
No, I mean, we watched it all. So there's 2 seasons. Each season has 10 episodes. Each episode is like an hour. Todd and I have been watching this thing for a freaking week.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think there was a delay between season 2 and the season 3 because there was actually a defamation suit against Netflix by some player involved in this that Netflix beat, by the way.
Awesome.
Okay.
Good intel.
So that's why there's a season 3 coming because, there was litigation, apparently some sort of a gag order until that civil suit was adjudicated.
Gotcha. Another point I wanted to bring up, too, is the day that this young lady came up missing, and after she left, Steve Avery went over to Brandon's trailer and said, hey, come on over, let's have a bonfire. So they had a bonfire. So that was the other thing the cops were doing is they kept trying to get Brandon to say, well, how high was that fire? Because initially his first time he talked about it, he's like, it was like a 3-foot fire. And then they were trying to get him to say the flames were so tall, it was taller than this big outbuilding that they had. So all that was fabricated. But here's the other thing that's extremely interesting. The medical examiner, the local coroner, so whenever there's a death, they get called out, right? Because they have to make sure that everything is being photographed properly, logged properly. They're the ones that determine this, that, and the other thing, right? And something I didn't know is that when you're on a crime scene, that coroner has more power than the sheriff, which I found I had no idea that was a thing. But she was being threatened because somebody had called her about this girl being missing and being found, out at Avery's property, and she had gotten a hold of the sheriffs, and they basically told her, nope, we don't need you. You don't even come out here because if you do, we're going to arrest you. And she was actually being threatened so much so to the point where she ended up quitting her job, which she loved. Now, the other thing is, so there were cut up and burnt bones on Avery's property, but there were also 2 other burn sites not on the property, which is more closer to where, like, this girl's car was actually seen by someone driving by saying, hey, I think I see that RAV4. So this guy reported it. That's when the sheriff from Montauk County went out and saw it, and that's when he read the license plate. But he's trying to deny that ever happened. So when they were looking at, the bones that were there, they were thinking, well, these aren't all the bones. So they must have used, put it in barrels and moved it because they found bones in these other 2 sites.
Right.
So if Avery killed this girl and chopped her up somehow and burnt her, why are all her bones? Why are a lot more bones found elsewhere? And where's the spine and where's the ribs?
Well, that and these articles that I'm reading are not saying that. So the bones were such small pieces and they were burned that they're not definitively the victims. They're just bones of an adult female. it doesn't say anything about a DNA match from those bones to the actual victim, at least not at the site at the Avery place.
Yeah, I don't think they ever did say they were a match. They just were like, nope, these are hers.
Right.
And
No, they just said that they belong to an adult female. Well, I mean, granted, it makes sense that they would be hers, but there is not any empirical evidence to that effect. So it's just all really, really sketchy and too many coincidences. There's too much circumstantial evidence and there's too much motivation for law enforcement to go after this guy for me to really buy it.
Right.
yeah, it's just, it's so frustrating because, and I'm not saying all cops, there are some amazing officers out there. So it's not like I'm tearing down everybody, but there are crooked cops, just like there are bad doctors, just like there are bad nurses, just like there are bad car salesmen or whatever. There's good and bad
There's
in every
bad
area.
grocery baggers.
Yeah,
You know,
making my bags too damn heavy.
right? And
Well, wait a minute.
Putting shit together that shouldn't be together. Don't be putting Comet next to my bananas.
Yeah, and don't put that big ham on top of my bread.
Right.
Hey now, what the hell are we talking about? You just got you.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
You know us. We just like to mix it up.
You just like to mix it up a little bit, but there aren't even baggers anymore. We end up, like Christine said, why am I working for you?
Right. The last 2 times I went
I want
grocery
my
shopping, I had to bag my own
employee
shit.
Christine wants her
Yeah.
employee discount.
Well,
No, Regina wants her
just said
employee
that.
discount.
But I agree. I don't want a discount. I want that. If I ever have to ring up my own damn groceries and bag my own damn groceries, the food store better pay me my hourly rate. Period. End of story.
That's right. I couldn't agree more. And every time I'm at the
Except
damn
that they
store,
make it so that if you want to get out of there before Tuesday, you gotta bring your own shit up.
ring it and
That's
bag it.
how they coerce us into do it. And it's like my first job ever was checking groceries and I fucking hated that. So why would I want to go? I don't like to go grocery shopping in the first place. And now you're going to make me ring this shit up myself?
It's not right.
That's
Yeah, no, I
a
refuse to
recipe
do-
for disaster.
What really sucks is trying to ring up your own 50-pound bag of dog food because nobody's got a scanner. You're going through self-checkout.
That's what the
like-
gun's for, dude. They have little guns for that.
Not at our store.
Not
They
at
don't.
ours.
There's
Oh.
there's no individual guns. So you got to pick up that heavy ass bag and swipe it.
No,
And
but
this is why I Instacart. Just saying.
I don't trust people to pick out the right bacon.
Yeah, whatever. I'm just saying.
They're gonna give me a
My
pound of
time
bacon
is
that's
more
all
valuable
fat.
to me. My time is more valuable to me than that. And we rate these people that deliver the groceries and shop for you. So, yeah, the people with the better ratings get more deliveries. So it actually is to their benefit to pick out pretty decent stuff.
Yeah, but there's no place to leave a comment like, "Yo, I want bacon." Open the window and look in the back. If it's all fat, put it down.
You actually can.
I'm
and
serious
you can
about
message
it.
them while they're shopping.
You have more experience
You can.
clearly than I do.
I do, because I am a lazy heifer. I don't like to go to the grocery store. I would rather shove bamboo under my own fingernails than go to the grocery store. My wife, on the other hand, enjoys it. So, I don't Instacart like I used to.
Right. Well, I hope that some of our listeners check out this show, because I would love to. I mean, you're hearing us talk about it. I mean, there's so many details. We couldn't possibly cover them all, but it's worth the watch. It's worth 20 hours of your life.
Is it honestly worth 20 hours of your life? Because me personally, I'd rather just listen to a podcast like this to hear them talk about it. And I'll get the gist.
And you know what? I'm with you. They should just listen to our podcast.
That's right. You know what?
Okay, I get that part, but I mean, I'm still saying this story is so fucking crazy that
It's
if
bonkers.
you don't watch the whole show, there's no way you're going to believe it. They're probably sitting here going, there is no way. They're full of shit.
Yeah, it's true. It's all true. That's what's crazy. Totally crazy. So anyhow, does anybody have any good news?
Yes, I do.
You do.
2 of the Robins this weekend got new rides.
2 Robins did get new rides.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here's what's crazy is we both got new rides on the same day, unbeknownst that we were both car shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Angela got a banging Jeep. She's named it Magnus. She's a car namer. Yep.
That's
very
cool.
sweet.
Although I have to say, and no offense, Angela, if you're listening, but just from past experience, my wife always says if somebody tries to give her a Jeep, like when she goes to pick up the rental car, she's like, "Is there a toolbox in the back?" Because they don't have the greatest track records always for being an everyday driver. But I had a Jeep and I didn't have any problem with it.
Todd is highly
I know,
offended.
I'm just saying. I had a Jeep and I didn't have any problem with it. But that's my wife's smart ass joke every time somebody gives her a Jeep.
I've had Jeeps
love
for
Jeeps
the
that
last
way.
3 decades, and I've never had issues.
And Christina's a big Jeep owner, too.
However, it does stand for just empty every pocket. But it's not necessarily always for repairs. It's because you want to, add this.
You want a lift
It
kit.
is like an adult Lego set, is what a Jeep is. It's like you can just keep on adding on to it for the rest of your life.
Right.
Let's talk about your cool
Can we talk
ride.
about my ride,
Yeah.
please?
Yeah, what'd you get?
Okay, so I got a Kona, which is an SUV, and it's all electric. And I still have a little anxiety about it. I just got it today. I mean, I bought it on Saturday, but I just got it today. And it's so quiet, it's eerie. I'm like, is this thing on?
Yeah.
Is this on?
It's not a microphone.
I know. So we walked out, and Terry, my salesman, who's the best, he's like, "Oh, your car's on, by the way." I said, "Say what?"
Yeah, that's the tricky part, is actually not making sure they're on, because if you put it in drive, it won't drive if it's not on. The tricky part about electric cars is it's hard to tell when they're off.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to leave them off and go in the house and know that your car is not running, that's the tricky part.
That
Right,
is,
but at least you won't asphyxiate on carbon monoxide if you leave it on accidentally. It'll just be dead tomorrow.
No, there's no.
there you
Yeah,
go.
but
You can't kill yourself with that car. Yes.
Okay, fine. Somebody can get in it and drive away with it.
Well, guess what? So here's the thing with this car. There's an app, and there's a setting in this app. So it's called valet. Have you guys ever heard of this before?
Yeah, my car has that too.
Right. So if someone's going to, and which, by the way, nobody valets my shit. No. I'll park it myself. I'm cheap. So anyway, you set it to where it won't go over 25 miles an hour. That's your valet setting. So it's like, don't you go joyriding in my Kona.
That's right.
Yeah, mine alerts me if it's further away from me than a certain distance.
Mm-hmm.
It sends me a text message. It's like, oh, hey, the valet is joyriding in your car.
Yeah, I'm gonna beat his ass. I'm gonna get you. Yeah. So I just, I had, because listen, we've all dealt with salespeople before, car salesmen, and I've had many crappy experiences, real pushy, typical salesperson. This guy Terry, he's the best, and he's ex-military.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is. He was in the Army.
No, he's not.
Yes, he was.
Terry?
You asked him, and he said yes, he was in the Army.
No, his dad was.
He was as well. And so was the finance guy.
He was a Marine.
He was a Marine.
Yep.
So if anybody, and by the way, Hyundai has like the most amazing warranty package you've ever seen. It blew my mind. So if anybody's wanting a Hyundai, I highly recommend it. Go see Terry and Lansing. He's the best.
He's the best.
Tell him Malice sent you.
Another free commercial.
You know what? I'm all about it.
Commercial. But
Yeah, but here's-
you know what?
here's-
Give a shout out where it's due.
I'm always going to call out the good people. I'm always going to do that.
Yep.
And he's a good dude.
And he's a
So-
listener now, so.
And he better be listening, Terry. You listening? I told you.
Well, I find it interesting that after we dealt with Terry, we all of a sudden got 15 new followers.
This is true.
So,
Maybe Terry's working his
Hey.
magic for the Malice.
yeah.
So just saying. Big shout out to my boy Terry. Thanks,
Well,
dude.
I was talking to people in the hotel bar in OKC, and there are a couple of people that were going to check it out. But the bartender did tell me that True Crime Podcast was a total chick thing.
Well, you know what? And he's not wrong. The demographics.
He's not.
Nope. The demographics do lean more towards women, which makes me wonder why. But what I will tell you is, on our Malice in the Mitten Facebook page, it has all of your, not demographics, analytics, right? And more men are showing up.
Yeah.
More men, they're getting it.
And our most of our top fans are men.
This is true, like Taven Rice.
Taven Rice.
Taven Rice is our man.
Alan,
Hey, Taven.
Alan
Very
Hunt.
cool.
Thank you, everyone, as always. And if any of you are listening to us on YouTube, please hit like and subscribe. We're watching those numbers jump, and we're loving it. So thank you so much for that. Keep liking and subscribing on YouTube, everyone. So thank you so much. Have a great week. And we will see you back on Friday for F-Bomb.
Right.
Yeah. So have a great week, everyone.
Bye.
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 Adios.